The packed courtroom buzzed with tension as District Attorney Marcus Webb stood before the jury, pointing accusingly at Rachel Torres. "Ladies and gentlemen, the prosecution will prove that Rachel Torres, the first female NFL quarterback, built her career on performance-enhancing drugs and lies," Webb declared dramatically. Rachel sat silently at the defense table, her blonde hair pulled back, wearing a modest navy blazer. She looked small and unremarkable, nothing like the powerhouse athlete who had dominated headlines for breaking barriers in professional football. The media section was packed. This was the biggest sports scandal in years. Camera flashes illuminated her face as she stared straight ahead, expressionless. Her overworked public defender, Sarah Kim, stood nervously. "My client maintains complete innocence," Kim said weakly, clearly outmatched by the high-profile prosecution team. The first witness was devastating. Dr. Elena Vasquez, former team physician, took the stand with confidence. "I administered EPO injections to Ms. Torres every 2 weeks for over 2 years, Vasquez testified. "Human growth hormone twice weekly. She was eager to proceed once I explained that her natural female physiology would prevent success without enhancement." Gasps filled the courtroom. Rachel didn't flinch. Webb presented medical records, financial transactions, and witness testimonies. Equipment manager Tony Brennan claimed he saw Rachel receiving secret injections after midnight, paid $5,000 monthly to keep quiet. "She personally handed me cash and threatened my career if I talked," Brennan testified. Former teammate Derek Williams alleged Rachel tried recruiting him into her doping program, offering money for participation. By day's end, the evidence seemed overwhelming. Headlines screamed, "Fallen hero, drug queen, greatest fraud in sports." Former fans burned her jerseys outside the courthouse. Women's groups who once celebrated her as a pioneer now denounced her as a betrayer of trust. Throughout it all, Rachel remained silent. Day 2 brought more damaging testimony. Financial expert Janet Morrison detailed suspicious payments from Rachel's accounts to pharmaceutical contacts and underground medical facilities. Over $500,000 in cash withdrawals over 18 months, Morrison testified. Always small amounts to avoid detection, always coinciding with her performance improvements. Former Dolphins coach Mike Stevens claimed Rachel's dramatic strength increases raised red flags. "In my 30 years coaching, I'd never seen improvements like hers," Stevens said. "Throwing velocity increased 25% in one season. Recovery time between games was superhuman. It wasn't natural." Webb played video footage comparing Rachel's rookie season to her peak performance. The difference was stark. She looked bigger, stronger, faster. "This transformation doesn't happen without chemical assistance," Webb told the jury. Sarah Kim's cross-examinations were weak. She suggested financial motives for witnesses but couldn't provide concrete evidence. She questioned timing but couldn't explain the medical records. "Ms. Torres, do you wish to testify on your own behalf?" Judge Patricia Hawkins asked during a brief recess. Rachel looked up, met the judge's eyes, opened her mouth as if to speak, then shook her head. The courtroom interpreted her silence as guilt. If innocent, why wouldn't she defend herself? Webb's case reached its climax with testimony from Rachel's former agent, Peter Harrison. "She came to me panicking about drug tests," Harrison claimed. "Asked me to find ways to mask her usage. When I refused, she fired me and spread lies about my professional conduct." The prosecution played secretly recorded phone calls where Rachel allegedly discussed covering up positive drug tests and bribing officials. "We need to make sure Dr. Chen keeps his mouth shut," a voice identified as Rachel said on the recording. "Whatever it costs." Team nutritionist Lisa Park testified about Rachel's obsession with supplements and injections. "She demanded access to the medical facility after hours," Park said. "Always secretive, always alone. When I questioned the protocols, she had me transferred to another department." Webb presented photographs of Rachel with known steroid dealers, financial records showing payments to corrupt doctors, and medical samples allegedly showing elevated levels of banned substances. This wasn't just personal drug use, Webb concluded. This was a sophisticated conspiracy involving bribery, intimidation, and systematic fraud that corrupted the integrity of professional sports. The media coverage intensified. Every network ran 24/7 coverage. Social media exploded with hatred. Death threats poured in. Rachel's family received police protection. Her former teammates publicly distanced themselves. Marcus Rodriguez, her former offensive captain, held a press conference. "I feel betrayed," Rodriguez said. "We trusted her. We believed in her. To learn it was all fake, it breaks your heart." By week's end, conviction seemed certain. Rachel faced 20 years in federal prison. Her career was over, her reputation destroyed. But she maintained her silence, sitting calmly as her world crumbled around her. The final day of testimony began with surprise. Judge Hawkins announced new evidence had been submitted overnight. "Counsel will meet in chambers immediately," she declared. During the recess, a distinguished older man entered the gallery, Dr. James Morrison from Johns Hopkins University. He carried a leather briefcase and observed everything with intense interest. When court reconvened, Sarah Kim announced with newfound confidence, "The defense calls Dr. Morrison to the stand." Webb looked alarmed. This witness hadn't been disclosed. "Dr. Morrison, please describe your background," Kim began. "I'm Director of Sports Medicine Research at Johns Hopkins," Morrison replied. "I specialize in physiological capabilities of elite athletes, particularly those with exceptional performance characteristics." "Have you examined evidence in Ms. Torres's case?" "Yes. 3 days ago, I was contacted by the NFL Players Association to review all medical records, blood samples, and performance data." Webb objected, but Judge Hawkins allowed the testimony. "I've found significant inconsistencies in the prosecution's evidence," Morrison continued. "The blood samples allegedly showing banned substances contain preservation chemicals not used until 2023, 2 years after they were supposedly collected." Murmurs filled the courtroom. "Furthermore," Morrison explained, "Ms. Torres's performance improvements follow patterns consistent with advanced but legal training methodologies. Her physiological markers indicate natural enhancement, not chemical." Webb desperately cross-examined, but Morrison's credentials were impeccable. He systematically dismantled the medical evidence. "In my expert opinion, these blood samples were either contaminated, mislabeled, or deliberately altered to show false positives." The courtroom atmosphere shifted as Morrison's testimony continued. "I've also analyzed the financial records," Morrison said. "The payments allegedly for drugs were actually for an experimental but legal recovery program using cryotherapy, altitude training, and cutting-edge nutrition protocols." He presented receipts showing Rachel's payments went to legitimate medical facilities for legal performance enhancement programs. Ms. Torres was participating in the most advanced legal training regimen available, designed specifically for athletes competing against physically superior opponents. Webb looked panicked as his case crumbled. Morrison continued, "I also examined the recorded phone calls. Audio analysis shows they've been edited. Critical context was removed to change their meaning." He played the unedited versions. Instead of discussing drug cover-ups, Rachel was discussing legal supplement protocols and ensuring proper medical clearances. Sarah Kim stood with confidence for the first time in the trial. "Dr. Morrison, in your expert opinion, do you believe Ms. Torres used performance-enhancing drugs?" "Absolutely not. Every piece of evidence suggests she achieved her remarkable performance through legal means, advanced training, and exceptional natural ability." The gallery erupted. Reporters scrambled for phones. Webb sat stunned. But Morrison wasn't finished. "I believe Ms. Torres was the victim of a coordinated frame-up designed to destroy her career and prevent other women from following her path into male-dominated professional sports." Judge Hawkins called for order as chaos erupted in the courtroom. Morrison presented his most damaging evidence. Financial records show Dr. Vasquez received $2 million from an offshore account registered to competitors who wanted Ms. Torres removed from the league. He displayed banking records showing payments to all key witnesses. Tony Brennan received $50,000, not $5,000. Derek Williams got $75,000. Even former coach Stevens was paid $100,000 for his testimony. Webb jumped up. "Objection! This is conspiracy theory nonsense." "I have documented proof," Morrison replied calmly, presenting a USB drive to the court. Banking records, communication intercepts, and audio recordings of the actual conspiracy being planned. Judge Hawkins reviewed the evidence on her computer, her expression growing increasingly serious. Morrison continued. The plan was simple: create fake evidence, bribe witnesses, and destroy the first woman to successfully compete at the highest level of professional football. He played audio recordings of Dr. Vasquez discussing the frame-up with unknown conspirators. "We need to make it look ironclad," Vasquez's voice said clearly. "Create the medical evidence first, then get the witnesses to corroborate. She's too much of a threat to the established order." The courtroom was silent except for the damning recording. "The goal wasn't just to destroy Rachel Torres," Morrison explained. "It was to send a message to any woman who dared to challenge male athletic dominance." Sarah Kim found her voice. "Dr. Morrison, who was behind this conspiracy?" Morrison hesitated, then answered, "A consortium of team owners, agents, and former players who saw Ms. Torres's success as an existential threat to traditional masculinity in sports." Webb was frantically whispering with his assistants, clearly caught off guard by revelations his case was built on fabricated evidence. Judge Hawkins called a recess to review the new evidence. When court reconvened, her demeanor had completely changed. After reviewing Dr. Morrison's analysis and supporting documentation, "This court has serious concerns about the validity of the prosecution's evidence," she announced. Webb stood desperately. "Your Honor, we move to adjourn pending investigation of these new allegations." "Motion denied," Judge Hawkins replied firmly. "Mr. Webb, were you aware that your key witnesses had been paid for their testimony?" "No, Your Honor. If these allegations are true, my office was also deceived." Rachel remained motionless throughout the proceedings, but for the first time, tears were visible in her eyes. Dr. Morrison addressed the court directly. "Your Honor, Ms. Torres maintained her silence not out of guilt, but because she knew speaking wouldn't matter if the system was rigged against her. She trusted that truth would eventually surface." Judge Hawkins nodded gravely. "The court finds that the prosecution's case was built on fraudulent evidence and perjured testimony. All charges against Rachel Torres are hereby dismissed with prejudice." The courtroom erupted. Reporters rushed for exits. Rachel's family members in the gallery wept with relief. But Rachel herself simply sat quietly, finally vindicated but bearing the scars of a battle that should never have happened. Judge Hawkins addressed her directly. "Ms. Torres, this court owes you an apology. You were the victim of a sophisticated fraud designed to destroy your career and reputation. I hope you can rebuild what was taken from you." Rachel stood, nodded respectfully to the judge, and walked out of the courtroom with quiet dignity. Outside the courthouse, media chaos ensued. Reporters shouted questions at Rachel as she emerged, but she maintained her characteristic silence. Her vindication was complete, but the damage to her reputation and career seemed irreparable. Dr. Morrison approached the microphones instead. "Rachel Torres is the victim of one of the most sophisticated character assassination attempts in sports history," he announced. "She was targeted not for what she did, but for what she represented. Proof that women could compete at the highest levels of traditionally male sports." Federal investigators immediately launched probes into the conspiracy. Within days, Dr. Vasquez was arrested for perjury and fraud. Tony Brennan, Derek Williams, and other witnesses faced charges for accepting bribes in exchange for false testimony. The NFL issued a formal apology and immediately reinstated Rachel's eligibility. But the damage was extensive. She had lost 2 seasons of her prime, millions in endorsement deals, and her starting position. Yet something remarkable happened in the days following her vindication. Support poured in from unexpected sources. Female athletes across all sports spoke out about facing similar attempts to discredit their achievements. Social media campaigns using #SilentTruth and #JusticeForRachel went viral. A week after the trial ended, Rachel finally broke her silence at a press conference. "I remained quiet not because I was guilty, but because I knew the system was designed to destroy me regardless of what I said," she spoke clearly and confidently. Sometimes the most powerful response to lies is simply living your truth and waiting for justice. The Miami Dolphins offered her starting position back. Major sponsors lined up to sign new contracts. Young girls across the country wore her jersey again, inspired by her resilience and dignity in the face of injustice. 6 months later, Rachel Torres led the Miami Dolphins to their first playoff victory in a decade, but her real triumph wasn't measured in touchdowns or victories. The conspiracy against her had been fully exposed. Congressional hearings were launched to investigate corruption in professional sports. New protections were put in place for athletes facing similar character assassinations. Rachel's silence during the trial became legendary, not as evidence of guilt, but as proof that sometimes dignity and truth are more powerful than any words you could speak. In her first post-vindication interview, she was asked why she never defended herself during the trial. "I learned something important," Rachel said. "When people are determined to believe a lie about you, your words won't change their minds. But when the truth finally comes out, it speaks louder than anything you could ever say." The courtroom battle had tested her, but it hadn't broken her. Rachel Torres had proven that sometimes the greatest strength is knowing when to remain silent and trust that justice, however delayed, will eventually prevail. Her story became more than just a sports comeback. It became a testament to the power of quiet dignity in the face of injustice and proof that the truth, no matter how deeply buried, always finds a way to surface.